We hope you've been enjoying the Wild Cumberland Podcast, where you can stay up to date on everything affecting Cumberland Island and its wilderness. If you value our mission and purpose, we ask that you share this episode with at least one friend. This simple act helps us grow our audience and improve our messaging for the organization. We thank you for your support, and before you go, be sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss an episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Jessica, Executive Director of Wild Cumberland.
And I'm Devin, a Wild Cumberland volunteer.
We appreciate you being here. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, our monthly email newsletter is the very best way to stay up to date on issues affecting Cumberland Island and its wilderness.
That's right. We're a small grassroots organization staffed entirely by volunteers, and our newsletter gets updated even when our website doesn't.
Yeah, so if you're not already subscribed, go to the website now, wildcumberland.org, and sign up so you don't miss any information.
In today's episode, we discuss our upcoming event with the Atlanta Science Festival, and we also touch on the Eastern Wilderness Act and something called the Endangered Wilderness Act. We also talk about some local, national, and MPS news that could affect Cumberland Island and its wilderness. Wild Cumberland is staffed entirely by volunteers. We say that a lot, often in passing, but we want to make sure our listeners understand what that really means. Our team members donate their time, effort, and talents to help ensure that Cumberland Island and its wilderness remain protected. Every volunteer can find a place with us. We invite you to sign up to staff Wild Cumberland events, contribute to the organization's social media, assist in grant writing, and much more. Join us at wildcumberland.org and help make a difference for the next generation. If you're a regular listener, you may recall that we talked a little about the event that our volunteers and partners have been working diligently on for several weeks, our Art of Activism experience. This is a free public program in partnership with Seven Stages Theater and the 2024 Atlanta Science Festival.
Yes, Devin, our team has been working so hard. We have been foraging, we have been painting, we have been building, we have been reflecting, because it's all happening this weekend. So
it's coming fast on us. Yeah.
The incredibly talented Dorothy O'Connor is going to join us for a one-of-a-kind installation inspired by Cumberland Island. Doors open at noon for the 1 o'clock event, and we're going to have some appetizers and drinks courtesy of our friends at Babs and Betsy Harris. And together we're going to discuss ideas related to stewardship and wilderness, and we would like everyone to be a part of the discussion.
Yeah, so tickets are free and available on the Atlanta Science Festival website right now, and I think there are a few tickets remaining, right?
Just a few, but yes, there are still some available. I do have to say it's been a real privilege working with these partners, and I'm hoping Dorothy will actually come back to join us here for a discussion about the creation of her piece in the future, if I can convince her.
That'd be great.
And I want to acknowledge the women who contributed in procuring all of these natural materials for her installation, because every piece was really selected with a lot of care and intention. So I think we will feel that and see that reflected in the work. Yeah,
absolutely. And the installation will remain as a part of the set of the production of True North.
Yes, that's right.
Which runs from March 15th through the 31st. Wild Cumberland supporters are eligible to get 50% off their tickets to that show. You can use promo code TRUEGREEN when you reserve your tickets. Again, that's promo code TRUEGREEN, TRUEGREEN.
Have you purchased your tickets yet, Devin?
I have. And
exciting.
I will be there.
Cool. Well, last month we tried to give a little bit of context for the Wilderness Act, especially probably for our newest followers. But I wonder, did you know that there's something called the Eastern Wilderness Act and something called an Endangered American Wilderness Act, Devin?
I'll be honest, don't know a whole lot about these, but I imagine they're pretty important for us. So tell me a little more.
Both of these laws were passed prior to our wilderness designation on Cumberland, which happened in 1982. And if we go back in time to where we were last month, we were talking about the Wilderness Act in 1964.
Right.
About 6 years later, one agency within the Department of Interior, the Forest Service, began taking a position that like few, if any, areas in the East qualified as wilderness because they were not pristine, we've heard that word before, or untouched by civilization and development. So Congress essentially said, we don't buy that. Sorry. Cultural land use should not keep an area from being restored to a secondary or intermediate wilderness, if you will, where at least natural processes continue to occur, similar to what was happening there. So they directed the Forest Service to follow through with an inventory and make recommendation for lands to Congress that would qualify as wilderness. So they demanded the Forest Service do that, and then they directed the National Park Service to do the same. And they provided condemnation authority in doing so.
So the Eastern Wilderness Act was written specifically for lands that have the ability to recover.
Very well said.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Gotcha.
The Endangered Wilderness Act, it did designate certain undeveloped natural forest lands as wilderness, but it was really written to correct oversights, essentially that the Forest Service didn't evaluate wilderness areas properly to begin with. So it was sort of a correction, if you will.
Sure. So that's where the endangered name for the legislation comes from.
Yep. In fact, I think most scholars in my reading and reflection tend to agree that passing the Endangered Wilderness Act allowed Congress to establish that areas modified by man should not be precluded from wilderness designation, and especially nor should roadless areas near major cities. And that's because they provide primitive recreation, like we find at Cumberland, opportunities very close to large population centers. So places like Atlanta, places, where many of us understand it's very difficult to have a more primitive recreational experience.
Yeah, and just a reminder, only about 5% of the entire United States is protected as wilderness.
Yeah. So when we're talking about these numbers, they're still very small in the scheme of things. Alaska actually contains over half of our wilderness, and I always like to remind people of that because that means only 2.5% of all wilderness is in the contiguous United States. Exactly. It's like the size of, Minnesota. It's very small. Right, yeah. And 90% of Georgia is privately owned.
Wow.
So there's only 10%.
Privately owned? Oh my gosh.
Most people do not realize this.
I didn't. Who manages more wilderness, the National Park or the Forest Service?
Okay, so I think that the Forest Service actually manages more units by number, but the National Park Service manages more acreage, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes, like Cumberland Island, National Seashore Wilderness, that is a unit.
You're right.
With therein so many acres. You can find a map, though, at wilderness.net. Our friends at Wilderness Connect have a really good interactive map where you can see wilderness areas, and you can also see how few and how small they are on the East Coast. So,
with only 5% or 2.5% in the continuous states, you might have to zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of zooming required. That's for sure. But it's a really good resource for people who need to help visualize or want to better visualize what these protected areas look like and where they are in our country.
For sure. We try to ensure our monthly email newsletter content is broken down into categories that make it simple for you to stay up to date on issues and policies that may affect Cumberland Island. There was a lot included in our most recent March edition, and it doesn't even really begin to cover everything that's going on.
Yeah, you're right. This is probably a good time to point out that we always need volunteers.
Always.
There's a lot of information to sift through and digest and analyze. And the more volunteers we have, the more we can accomplish. So just a reminder that we're always looking for volunteers.
Always.
But we do have some Cumberland Island updates. We are fortunate to have Interim Superintendent Gia Wagner on site while we await a new and permanent superintendent for Cumberland Island. I had an opportunity to cross paths with her briefly recently and was very impressed.
Visitors have been a little less than impressed, though, with the new speed limit signs on the actual seashore.
There's been a little bit of controversy over this one.
We shared photos on our social media, and they've actually been there since the latter half of 2023.
Yeah, we started hearing about these probably in October and November and got a chance to see them for ourselves. First-time visitors wouldn't have any context, of course, that those are new. And regular, recurring visitors are certainly who we're hearing from the most. A lot of those people are just coming back probably for their visit for the season. So they're startled by these bright yellow signs.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on that. First off, why are people driving that fast on the island to begin with?
I mean,
it's a single lane, sandy road, almost 18 miles long, and it cuts through a federally protected wilderness area. I mean, how many species do you think cross that stretch of road every day?
At any given point, right? I don't know how fast you need to be going. I don't know what could be so urgent. I think Cumberland Island is a place that forces you to slow down in many ways.
Sure.
And that bright yellow signage it did feel a little out of character or incongruent with the experience that we've historically had there. I mean, maybe it will offer some protections for slowing people down for those animals that we're talking about who have to cross the roadway. There are a lot of residents and visitors and businesses and National Park Service employees using the road at any given time.
Always. When you look behind the Ice House Museum over there, what is that? They call it the Captain's House?
By Dungeness Dock.
Okay, yeah. There's 30, 50 MPS vehicles, mostly trucks parked over there, right, at any given time.
You see them, it's like a white sea. You look over and it's just a bunch of cars.
I have to wonder if this is to do with more like biker and vehicle safety than hiker or pedestrian safety.
I think that could very well be the case.
Does the MPS enforce or require bike helmets?
Careful, Devin. You're getting into a slippery slope here. That's like asking who's responsible for paying for road maintenance.
Or the horses, right?
Spot on.
So speaking of horses, are there any updates on the feral horse litigation?
Nothing huge right now. It's all still in court, sort of administrative processes, I guess you would say. The motion was amended, and we're waiting on a decision on that amendment. So we'll keep everybody informed as information becomes available.
Well, the feral horses of Cumberland Island may be a tourist draw for some visitors, but there are a lot of people who are excited about another species on Cumberland Island.
Yeah, this is actually really cool.
These guys are cute. The oldest known Great Lakes piping plover was spotted again.
They're so cute.
Nearly all piping plovers are banded, allowing researchers to gather data and identify individual birds as they migrate back and forth between their summer and winter habitats. For more about Great Lakes piping plovers and species recovery efforts, visit greatlakespipingplover.org. Again, that's greatlakespipingplover.org. We're so grateful for the work of our individuals who are often volunteers, as we've stated, that have helped to document species, especially birds, on Cumberland Island.
Yeah.
Because, birds can fly. So they're a little hard to catch.
Speaking of species, on February 12th, our organization joined more than 20 others in a petition to NOAA to list the American horseshoe crab as an endangered species under the ESA. Kind of a big deal. Yeah,
the populations of those horseshoe crabs have plummeted in recent years because of overharvesting and habitat loss. Horseshoe crab blood harvests have, I think, doubled since 2017, with nearly 1 million horseshoe crabs harvested for their blood in 2022.
Yeah, and there's actually a synthetic alternative available, but it's not widely accepted and used in the United States yet. The tri-spine horseshoe crab in Asia actually faces similar threats and is, I think, on the verge of extinction for similar reasons. So we are proud to participate in that petition and hope that it is successful.
Absolutely. I noticed the Seashore has advertised for help clearing trails at Cumberland Island for the first time in a long time, actually. We included a link for folks in our newsletter.
We get a lot of inquiries about these kinds of opportunities, maybe as often as we get complaints about the overgrown trails. So I'm really glad to see some opportunities for the public to plug in and serve the Seashore in this way.
For sure. Because we're all sick and tired of writing of comments and letters, right?
Yeah.
Trail maintenance seems like a pretty nice alternative right now.
You're right.
But we can't stop yet because on February 9th, the day after advocates and also alligators
Yes, they were there at the Capitol.
convened at our state capitol to demonstrate support for the Okefenokee Swamp, the Environmental Protection Division opened 3 separate draft permits, air quality, surface mining, and groundwater withdrawal. They opened those for a 30-day public review and comment period.
Yep.
That comment period has since been extended to 60 days with a new deadline of April 9th.
Yep. So once again, we need everybody to oppose the mining of and adjacent to Okefenokee Swamp. And we understand all of the reasons why very well by now. But if you need any information, we did include a link to help you access the permits and documents and provide your comments. And there's actually a link to one news story that I think summarizes the whole thing in a very concise, helpful way.
Yeah.
In case, by chance, you're not up to speed on this issue yet. So please continue to voice your opposition to Twin Pines.
The Current recently reported 16 members of Congress, including Ossoff, Warnock, and Carter. They've asked to authorize a study examining the benefit of both widening and deepening the harbor at the Port of Savannah. We talked last month about the Port of Brunswick being the second busiest port in our nation for wheeled cargo.
Oh, yeah, that was the whole roll-on,
Yeah,
roll-off, lift-on, lift-off
Right, yeah.
difference. Uh-huh.
Pretty much anything that's, got wheels on it, I guess. So be sure to check that out if you missed it.
Yeah, they're pretty close to each other, and that would be pretty significant impacts to 2 ports just adjacent to where we are. So I'd be curious to see what happens.
Yeah. So for a few national or MPS related things to call out since our last episode, Everglades National Park in Florida is currently accepting public comment on a wilderness stewardship plan through March 31st. So we know many of you want to weigh in on that. Sadly, but perhaps not surprisingly, the number of people disturbing MPS wildlife is reported to have doubled since last year. And PEER, which is Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, and the National Parks Conservation Association, or the NPCA. It's a lot of acronyms. But they called out agencies for failing to conduct environmental assessments that evaluate alternative actions and their impacts under the National Environmental Policy Act for air tours of parks.
Yeah, this has been going on for a really long time.
It seems like
we've mentioned it, we've covered it, but these agencies use what they call a categorical exclusion to avoid an environmental study. And
Always loopholes.
They claim that they aren't necessary because they don't significantly affect the human environment. Not that the human environment is the only one to be considered.
Exactly.
Or anything else. But that is where that is currently. So
the Biden administration, they also announced nearly $200 million will be spent in more than 40 park units over the next 10 years related to climate restoration and resilience projects.
That's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Will any of these projects affect or apply to Cumberland Island, or do you know?
I'm sure they will. I've taken a look at the list, and it's still sort of in development, but we're eager for the placement of a permanent superintendent. It's going to take them a while to get up to speed. There was a lot left outstanding from the previous superintendent, and there's definitely a lot more coming their way. So we'll keep you posted and be following that initiative closely.
Absolutely. As always, our team of volunteers strives to provide the information and context you need to help protect Cumberland Island and its wilderness.
And we always like to hear from you. So a reminder that we have this new feature on our website. You can record an audio message with your feedback or questions. It's actually pretty cool.
So cool. This is really cool.
And send it to us so we can play it here or we can answer your questions directly here on the podcast. So check it out. And before we go, I want to remind everybody that our annual Commitment to Cumberland virtual auction is approaching. This is our big fundraiser. Once a year we try to do this, and it makes a big difference. So May 1st through 3rd, let's make sure everybody has their calendars marked.
Oh yeah, May 1st through 3rd. And of course we will provide updates in the continuing newsletters. I can't believe that's 2 months away.
It's going to be here like before we know it. But participation in this is what makes our work possible all year long.
Yes.
We aren't underwritten by some big foundation. We're not sponsored by a corporation. We're all just individuals who care a lot about a place. And
what's that place?
Cumberland Island.
So don't miss your chance to bid on exclusive items available only during this 3-day virtual fundraiser. and you can expect amazing art, unique experiences, home goods, and a whole lot more.
There's a mystery box too, remember?
Yes, we mentioned that last time, right?
I'm so excited.
I'm excited to find out what kind of box this is and what's inside of it. It seems pretty well timed for graduation season, Mother's Day, wedding and anniversary seasons, Father's Day. I'm sure I'm missing something, right?
No, we did that on purpose. So if you have any gift giving to do, it's the right time to do it. You can help support our work to keep Cumberland wild when you do.
Actually, we really appreciate that Wild Cumberland works so hard to support artists and small business owners, especially those who value and prioritize our natural world. If you can't participate in the virtual auction, there are other free ways for you to support our work. We always need volunteers to help with research and writing, administrative tasks, photography and video, fundraising and events, comment submissions, everything.
The list goes on.
Right. I mean, I could continue on this entire podcast about it. So email or message us through the website, and let's do this together. Join us.
We know how valuable your time is, so thanks for choosing to spend some of it with us today. Stay wild. Wild Cumberland is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and all donations are tax deductible. Learn more and take action at wildcumberland.org.
The Wild Cumberland Podcast is produced by Vertical River, and this episode was edited by Greg Cuson.